Rev up your engines!
Well, the BS is flying now. The oil bosses say they're going to boost output and they deny profiteering. Whenever they get a chance to raise it, they do. And the hilarious thing is they say it's not a monopoly. Yeah, one raises the price, they all do. It's just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, the politicians are all paid for it. Then they like listening to the, oh, don't worry, we didn't profiteer. And then they all have a little party at night where they give them money to get elected. Since the elected officials in the United States, like every other night, they go to a party to get funds for getting elected the next time, and then they all probably have a good laugh. Well, they did profiteer. I don't care what they say. These are the chiefs at ExxonMobil, Chevron, and others, which they said in Washington, D.C. You know, they have to jump in a bandwagon. They look like they're doing something, but in reality, they're doing absolutely nothing or close to nothing. They said, well, maybe we'll put out 1 million barrels a day, which is like 5% of what Americans use, so that's not going to change the price all that much. The executives at this meeting, the oil companies and the politicians says, well, there is no quick fix here. In other words, they're going to keep the prices up so they can profiteer, even though they say they aren't. And a bunch of nonsense. Oil prices are up 70% from last year, and they were even higher before. Any excuse to make money, that's all those companies care about. And then we're not profiteering. No, don't look at us. It's market forces. And the Democrats press the oil companies to stop the stock buyback. You know, they buy back their own stock to make it worth more. But do they do anything about it? No, they just say, please don't do it, and then they just do it anyways. And then they try to act like, oh, well, green energy will solve all this. Green energy is super expensive. You want to talk about high energy costs? They're much higher than this little spike in oil prices. You're talking about a dramatic increase of what it's going to cost to do stuff with green energy. It's not as efficient. Hardly any of it exists, so they got to build it from scratch, which is going to cost a small fortune. So if you're talking about money, don't think green energy is going to save anybody. Oh, it says my Golf 1.6 is overheating. The water pump's working, fan's working, new thermostat, coolant's fine. It's not mixing oil with coolant. The head gasket isn't blown, but it overheats after a 5-minute drive. You say the head gasket isn't blown. How do you know? You got to do my test. How to tell if your head gasket is blown, Scotty. Watch that video. You can buy a test thing on Amazon for like $35. You can test it yourself if you want. It's not that hard to do. Then you'll see if it's blown or not. Now, if it's not blown, you say the water pump is working. How do you know if it's working? That's the thing. I've seen water pumps, the outside spins, the pulley, right? And then in the backside is the impeller. That spins and pushes the water around. Just like the impeller, a propeller on a motorboat engine, right? It spins and it pushes the water around. Sometimes those things either rot or they fall off. The outside will spin, but the inside doesn't. The only way you can tell if a water pump's working is with a mechanic like myself. We have a gauge that we stick on the hose, and then we see how it's flowing, and it shows how it's flowing, how much pressure's coming out. You probably don't have anything like that. Could easily be your water pump's going out. That it's not working because the impeller broke off inside. Volkswagens have a history. A lot of them have plastic parts, and the plastic parts just get hot and they fall off the shaft. Could easily be that. If it isn't, watch my other video, how to fix an overheating car engine. Scotty, just watch that. It'll show you every test you can possibly do, and you'll be able to figure out what it is. I'm betting either the water pump or a head gasket knowing Volkswagens. Winston FK8 says, I got a 2019 Honda Civic Type R. There's mud and rust on the spark plug and ignition coil pack. I've had misfiring, and the dealer showed me on only one cylinder, the spark plug and the ignition coil has mold and rust on it. How could that happen? I'm assuming it's not sealing right. When that coil on plug goes in, it's supposed to seal. If that wasn't sealed right or pushed in tightly, water will get inside, and that's what's going to happen. You're only getting a rust and mold if water is getting inside. Somehow water got inside. Could be as simple as the boot is put on cockeyed and didn't snap on right when they built the car. Because it's 2019, it's only 3 years old, right? But if it wasn't put on right, water's going to get inside, and that's what happened. Somehow water got inside. And it only happened on one cylinder because they only screwed up putting the coil on one. The other ones are working okay because the other ones are put on tight, and that one wasn't. I would have said, hey, why is that the case? And you guys didn't build it right and haven't put a new coil plug and boot assembly on. I would say put a new one on. It might have warped the old one, and now since it was cockeyed, it won't seal right. Clarence Colby says, my brakes locked up after a car wash. I got a 2000 Honda CR-V I recently bought. I took it to a car wash, and the rear brakes seemed to lock up. I took it to the mechanic. They said the back brake cylinder's leaking and need to replace the hardware. They want $1,000. Is the leaking cylinder important to fix? Yeah, the leaking cylinder's important to fix, but $1,000, they're just ripping you off. Yeah, I can buy those cylinders for like $35, and it takes me maybe 20 minutes to replace them. It's not hard to replace a leaking wheel cylinder. They are relatively simple things to do. Probably one of the reasons it locked up after the car wash. It's leaking stuff is gooey. The car wash got it wet. It'll make them corrode somewhat, especially the drum, and it'll stick on and lock on. But you do want to fix it as soon as possible. But either do it yourself, watch my video on how to replace brake wheel cylinders, or take it to an honest mechanic who isn't going to charge you an arm and a leg. It's not that complicated of a job. It's a pretty easy job to do. And the parts aren't all that expensive. They're just ripping you off big time. That's kind of a good thing it happened after you went to a car wash, because now you know there's a problem. Which is the reason I tell people, every once in a while, just go into your car. Look on the end with a flashlight, nice big flashlight. You can shine around. Look on the inside of each tire. So if there's every goo, oil, crud on the inside of the tire, that means one of the wheels have leaks in the brakes. And then look up and see what's leaking. It takes you 2 seconds to look at the inside of the tires. Then you won't be stuck somewhere. But it's very important. Fix it as soon as possible. You don't want the brakes going out. Hit the Road says, I got a 2021 Chevy Malibu. It cranks, but it doesn't start. It stopped operating on the road, power cut off. Towed to the dealer. They said there was oil sludge in the engine. Clean the valves, change the oil, change the spark plugs, clean the oil pump, replace the fuel filter. They put it all back together, and now it cranks, but it doesn't start. Dealer's at an impasse. What could it be? If it was really that bad, they had to clean the oil pump. It was that full of sludge, and you said it died while you were driving it. The engine's probably toast. I don't know why they can't figure out. What are the idiots? Any mechanic can figure out why a car doesn't start. You need compression of the engine. You need ignition to fire the spark, because it's a gasoline, not a diesel engine, and you need fuel inside. Something's going on. But from you saying it died on the road and all the sludge was inside, I'm assuming the engine's ruined. But any mechanic worth their salt could tell you that in 2 seconds. We would just take the spark plugs out, do compression tests of the engine, say, oh, there's no compression, the engine's shot. It's very easy for a mechanic to tell you what is wrong with an engine when it doesn't start. We can say you don't have spark, you don't have fuel, or the compression shot because the engine was destroyed. From you saying it died on the road, and then they say all the sludge was in from not changing the oil or whatever, I'm assuming the engine is ruined. Take it to a mechanic like me. He can tell you in 25, 30 minutes why it's not starting. They might say, like I said, do a compression test. The engine's toast. And then, do you want to put another engine or are you going to get another car? Matthew says, what are your thoughts on a 2004 Toyota Tundra that hasn't been driven the last 2 years? Okay, my first thought is, why hasn't been driven in the past 2 years? I have seen more people that get suckered into buying a piece of junk because the guy says, well, it was running when I parked it, but it ain't running now. Okay, why was it parked? Now, if they didn't use it, the Tundras are great. Maybe the guy didn't want the truck for a while, and he just parked it. So, in that case, bring a battery with you, put a new battery in it, bring some starting fluid, see if you can crank it and start it up and take it for a road test. Could be a great truck. But, on the other hand, if you can't get the thing running, don't buy it. Never buy a used vehicle that doesn't run unless you expect to put an engine, transmission, whatever into it. You have no idea what kind of shape anything is in if you can't start it up and drive it around. So start there. They're great vehicles. They're great vehicles, but always be leery of something that's sat for years, because generally there's a reason. My grandson buys and sells cars all the time, and he gets them where the guys will say, yeah, that engine was running great, but I parked it 2 years ago. And you're like, why did the guy park it? Then we get it back and you start it up, and the engine rods are knocking, the engine's shot, and the guy knew it, he's just lying about it. So always get them running and drive them before you buy it, or the deal's off. Well, now Polestar, the electric car company, Volvo, spin-off of Volvo, signed a deal with Hertz to buy 65,000 of their electric cars. Of course, most people don't even know what Polestar is. One of the reasons they're probably doing it is to get recognition, so people know, hey, there's more than Tesla, there's Polestar. It's the version of Volvo electric cars. They spun it off and decided to call it Polestar. If you remember, Hertz made a deal to buy a bunch of Teslas. Nobody knows exactly how many or what's actually going to happen. And Elon said, well, you got to keep paying what we're charging more. We're not going to give you a deal. Business deals, you never know until they're over. Now, last year, Polestar shipped out 29,000 electric cars worldwide. So they're trying to build it up. Considering that this deal's for 65,000 cars last year, they only did 29,000. Some of it might be fantasy. Who knows? People estimating that the deal's worth $3 billion worth of sales for Polestar. I mean, who knows? Hertz went bankrupt before. Maybe they will again. Who knows? If Hertz went bankrupt again, maybe they'd have to repo their cars from Polestar. And of course, Polestar wants recognition. If people see them, they drive them, maybe they'll like them and say, hey, over the years I've had many customers rent a car and then buy it because they liked it. They wanted to try it out. So, not a bad move by Polestar. Dealing with a company like Hertz that arrests people for stealing cars they never even had, maybe not such a great choice, but they want to get it out there. Polestars are going to be available in Europe spring of 2022, and then North America and Australia later in 2022, they say. You'd still have to wait to rent one in the United States, but they're pushing in Europe because the Europeans, of course, they have all these rules and regulations, and they're trying to go towards electric cars. Good luck generating the electricity, you know. I don't see them building any power plants anytime soon, but we'll see what happens. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.